This is Fox 5 Local News at 6.
Breaking news right off the top tonight out of Howard County, where we now know the identities of two of the people killed in today's shooting at the Columbia Mall. 3 people total were killed in the shooting, including the gunman. Howard County Police have just released the names of the 2 victims. They are 21-year-old Brianna Benlolo of College Park and 25-year-old Tyler Johnson of Ellicott City, Maryland.
Police say the shooting happened around 11:15 this morning inside the Zoomies skate shop, where 2 victims were employees. At this point, police have not identified the shooter.
Fox 5 has live team coverage outside the Columbia Mall tonight. We're going to begin with our Fox 5's John Henrahan with the latest details. John?
Well, the calls started coming in from both shoppers and employees here at Columbia Mall in Columbia, Maryland, right around 11:15 a.m. We're not sure how many shots were fired. Witnesses have told us varying accounts. Some people told us 3 shots. One woman told us 4 shots. One woman told us she heard 6 separate shots, all loud. Apparently, the gun used was a shotgun. The shootings happened, as you mentioned, inside and perhaps just outside a store called Zoomies, which sells skateboards, skateboard accessories, and clothing. That store is on the 2nd floor, just above the food court, where at 11:15, you might imagine there were many people gathered. Regular patrol officers from the Howard County Department of Police happened to be in the neighborhood, and a SWAT team from that department was doing an exercise nearby. They responded to this mall within 2 minutes of the first calls, but by the time they got here, the victims were already dead, and so was the shooter who was wielding a shotgun. We do not know the identity of the shooter because police are being very slow about trying to get to his body. In fact, the chief of police here, Bill McMahon, explained why they're taking their sweet time in approaching the shooter's body.
The identity of the shooter, we don't know who that is yet. When our officers approached, he was obviously deceased, but he was also still had a large amount of ammunition still on and about him. And so, because of concerns about any other weapons he may have or explosives, we are approaching this with an abundance of caution, and we are getting assistance from some of our federal partners in making sure there's no explosives on the body of the deceased. That's being done now. As that process is resolved, then we will be able to work more intently on identifying who that shooter is.
Even though the first responding patrol officers and the SWAT team that happened to be nearby pretty much ascertained that it looked like it was a shooter who was down from a self-inflicted gunshot wound because they found both the shotgun and the ammo alongside him, you're never sure. This was a lesson from the Virginia Tech massacre. So more SWAT teams poured into the mall throughout the day. And what they did, the shoppers and the store employees mostly went to the backs of the stores, which police say was the right thing to do. And slowly and methodically, they searched every single store in the mall in an effort to bring out the shoppers, interview those who had seen something in relation to the shooting, and let the others go home. They put State Highway Department trucks at the entrance to the mall to shut off the mall to the public, and they called in school bus drivers from Howard County on a Saturday to ferry the shoppers who hadn't seen anything back to their cars as they were released section by section from the mall. And they ferried some of those shoppers who had seen something to detectives for further interviews. We do not know at this point, or police have not released at this point, the motive of the shooter, perhaps because they haven't gotten to his body yet and had a chance to see whether he has a wallet on him. There has been some speculation in some media that this was a domestic incident. The police say they don't know that's true. They don't know that's not true. They say here in Howard County, they just don't know what the motive was for the shotgun-wielding man who killed 2 young store employees in their 20s from the skate shop in the 2nd floor here at Columbia Mall. This is a crime scene. The mall will be closed for the entire evening as police continue to process this scene. And I presume they will be open tomorrow, but I don't know that for sure. But Columbia Mall is definitely closed for this evening. Laura, that's the latest from Columbia.
John, this is still a continuing story, a developing story for sure. We'll check back in with you if there are any new developments from where you are. Thanks very much.
All right, we continue our team coverage of the shooting at Columbia Mall. Let's bring in Fox 5's Jennifer Davis with reaction of today's tragic events. Jennifer?
Hi there, Matt. We talked to a lot of people who were inside the mall here today when shots rang out. They all say the adults were so scared, but they say it must have been so much more frightening for all the children who were here in the mall on this very busy Saturday. There was a play area that a lot of people told us was packed. There's a cartoon cuts they say was full of children getting their hair cut. There were a lot of children in the food court, but when the shots rang out, everyone described parents scooping up their children, running for a place to hide, and then sheltering in place in many cases for more than an hour. When shots first rang out, a lot of people say they didn't realize what was happening.
All of a sudden we started hearing all this banging, and I thought, you know, because usually they do a lot of work in the food court, I thought maybe they were just doing some work down there. And people came running away from there and said, there's a guy in the food court and he's upstairs shooting, he's got a gun.
Word quickly spread that it was gunshots.
My boss said you have to run, it's Sean gun. And I was like, what are you talking about? And I see everybody running, grab the children.
Police say it was chaotic on this busy Saturday, but most did what they should have, sheltering in place. Wanda Davila ran from the food court into the back room of Chick-fil-A, where she hid with several others, including children and a baby.
I feel sorry for the children because they was very scared. You know, I feel calm, thanks God, but it's two girls with the father, and this girl was so scared. Then this lady was very scared because she couldn't find her daughter, 14 years old. She was crying, where is my daughter?
These friends found shelter with many others in the back room at Victoria's Secret.
And then they pulled the gates down and just said, you know, it's safe, you're safe, you're safe.
It was horrifying. And then once we heard about fatalities, you know, then there's another wave of emotion. You know, you're like, what's going on? What happened? And, you know, here you are just on your Saturday morning going about your business, and, you know, to have something like this happen, it shakes you up.
Now, Wanda told us that woman who was having trouble connecting with her 14-year-old daughter was able to find her as the day went on. The biggest challenge for a lot of people once they got out of the mall was that when they say they really felt like they were running for their lives inside, and in many cases they left their purses, their keys, their phones, their coats inside the mall, and at this point it's unclear when they're going to get those belongings back. Matt?
Hard to imagine just how frightening that must have been. Jenny Davis, thank you. We have just received a statement from Rick Brooks. He is the CEO of Zoomies. That's the store where the shooting happened. Brooks says, in part, we are deeply saddened by the violence that has occurred this morning within our store at the mall in Columbia. The Zoomie team is a tight-knit community, and all of our hearts go out to Brianna and Tyler's families. Brooks says the company is making arrangements for counseling to be made available to Zoomie employees who worked with the victims. Let's go over to Laura now.
And a lot of people inside the mall at the time of the shooting or approaching the mall were on social media as all these events started to unfold this morning around 11:15. And here is one tweet from Michael that reads, quote, almost went into Columbia Mall and people were running around like crazy because there was a shooting. So scary. Another Twitter user writes in all caps, not a joke. Shooter in food court of Columbia Mall. Do not enter. Turn around. Call 911. And Matt tweeted, quote, a friend is locked in the Disney store with about 100 other people. I think the people are clearing out each store at a time. Well, we can only imagine how terrifying it must have been for the people inside the mall, hiding for safety and wondering what was going on as all of this unfolded. And joining me now is Kristen Paolini. She was inside the Macy's when this shooting started. Kristen, thanks for being with us tonight. I'm glad you're okay. These must have been scary moments.
It was scary, Laura, but I'm just glad we're safe and I'm back with my family.
Me too. Where were you in the mall when all of this started happening?
I was shopping with a dear friend. We were in Macy's. We had actually started out in Nordstrom's, walked around the corner to Macy's, went into a dressing room. We're in the dressing room for a while, came out to a cleared out second floor of Macy's and a security guard directing us immediately down the escalator.
Did you hear anything other than the guard directing you? Did you hear any of the shots?
No, honestly, looking at the mall now as to where it happened, now that that's been confirmed as to where we were a good distance away from the actual shooting in the store that it occurred in. And being in the dressing room, you know, we really didn't hear anything until we came outside of the dressing room.
So the security guard came in. Do you know how long between when the shooting first happened and when he came to tell you to get out of the area?
I would say it was minutes. It was within a couple minutes, the time span, and it was an immediate action on his part.
And what did he tell you?
He said, drop the clothes and move swiftly down the escalator to the main floor. We're holding customers and staff were pushed back into storage hallways and behind the hosiery displays within Macy's.
And did he give you any explanation about what was going on?
There was really no explanation at that time because there was nothing filtering in through mall security. And once we were placed back upstairs into a storage room that was a locked room, that's when the Twitter feed started blowing up, and people that were surrounding us were coming out with what was on Twitter, what was on Facebook, what was on, all the different news channels.
But before you had information from Twitter, what were you thinking was going on?
You were fearful. You were confined in one area and what was going on surrounding you within the mall. You knew, as soon as we exited that dressing room, we knew that something horrible was happening because the mall was in complete lockdown.
This makes you very emotional, I can see.
It was
scary.
scary. It was very scary.
You were on the other side of the mall, but close enough. It
was
was
close enough to know something was awful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and lives were forever changed.
So you moved down to that area, and then what happened? How long were you in that holding area where the security guard took you?
We were in one holding area for about 25 to 30 minutes, and then I think once they realized what was happening within the mall, they decided to take us back up in the Macy's store. They took us into a more secure four-walled room, and we were told to stay in there until they really knew what was going on, and that was probably well over an hour.
And at that point, you're reading what's happening on Twitter? Were you on Twitter?
I was not on Twitter.
But others who were with you were?
Others were on Twitter, and I was able to relay messages to my family and my kids and my husband.
To tell them you were okay.
To tell them what was going on, and I did text out to my brother, who's a sergeant in the Connecticut State Police, so he was starting to relay facts into me that was coming through the news networks.
And he was telling you what you should be doing?
He was telling me what to do just in case. Because again, we didn't know how close we were at that time to what was going on.
I can't imagine how you must have been feeling during that time.
I think
not knowing, that's a long time to not know what's going on.
It was well over an hour and a half.
What were you thinking?
Just that I was fortunate not to be out there, that we were confined in the store, because a few minutes before that we were going to go eat something in the food court. And we said, let's just go in one more store before we go down there.
Wow.
So that was a blessing.
Fate.
Yeah.
So you felt safe in
I
that
felt
place where they were holding you?
We did. We talked about it on the way home, and both of us felt very safe. We felt safe that Macy's was executing whatever policy or procedure they had, which was fantastic. No one was really panicking where we were, surrounding us, which was a relief. I was with a dear friend, which was wonderful to have someone there. And I felt that they had our safety as their priority.
And at the time that they started clearing the mall, what was your first indication that things were starting to become stable, that you were safe?
They were starting to do sweeps of every store, and a major colonel of whatever police force, state police, I'm not quite sure what his title was, but he was someone that definitely was out and knew what was happening, and he came in, and the bomb dogs were doing searches of all the major stores. So once we had clearance from that aspect, then they held us for maybe about 15 more minutes. They kind of did a facial survey of everyone that was in that holding room in Macy's, and then one by one they let us through the door out to get to our cars.
And how long was that process getting
That
out?
process, probably from the time they cleared us from the higher ups with the bomb dogs, that was probably about 15 minutes until we were cleared, that they said the mall was secure, and we were filtered out one main door, and then we had to walk around to where our cars were parked.
So from the shooting at 11:15, what time were you actually walking out of the mall?
We were actually back to our car by about 12:55. We were in our cars at 1 o'clock.
That's a long time.
It felt very quick, though. It did not feel that long when you're thinking and you're sitting and you're wondering and you're waiting.
This must have been so surreal for you. We hear about these stories. This happens all too often.
It does, too often.
And now you've been in a situation where this has happened very close to where you were. What are you thinking as you see this video, as you hear these stories?
Well, this is the first time I'm seeing footage of what actually was going on outside. So that puts it all into perspective. And I'm just glad that my friend and I were in a safe spot, and that the employees of Macy's really kept a calm setting for us and ushered us into a safe zone for what they thought was safe at the time. And it ended up working out fine on our side. I feel so awful for the people that were out there, out in the food court, out where they saw things, out.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Yeah. And there's so many kids there too.
So
and
many
a packed
kids on
mall.
a
Was it
Saturday
packed when
morning.
you were there? Yeah.
Saturday morning is a packed mall. Little kids in strollers, grandparents, families. You just don't think, but in this world today, you have to think that this is becoming an everyday news.
It can't.
And it's awful.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
awful.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's horrible. But that's we'll continue to talk about this and the mental health part of this and many other things. But Kristen, I'm glad you're okay
Thank you.
tonight, and hug your kids.
Hug your kids tonight. Yes, very much.
Yeah. All right. Thanks very much
Thank you.
for being brave and coming and telling your story.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Matt, back to you.
Kristen, thank you. Glad that you're okay. A quick recap on what we know at this hour. Once again, we now know the identities of the 2 victims in the shooting, 21-year-old Brianna Ben-Lolo of College Park and 25-year-old Tyler Johnson of Ellicott City. Police say the 2 were employees of the Zoomies store inside the Columbia Mall where the shooting took place. Police have not yet released the identity of the shooter who was also killed. Stay with Fox 5 for continuing coverage of this horrible shooting out of Howard County. We will bring you live updates on air throughout the hour and later tonight on Fox 5 local news at 10 and 11. Our website, myfoxdc.com, will continue to update the story, as well as our Facebook and Twitter pages.
Up next, as the Fox 5 local news at 6 continues, the frigid temperatures did not stop some people from taking it all off today and plunging into unbearable waters. Can't believe they did it. And Gwen, speaking of the cold, when can we expect all this Arctic air to pass?
Well, we've got a few days to deal with it. They are very brave. I'm not quite that brave. Cold air sticking around, folks. We're going to talk about that polar vortex once again. We'll be back after the break. Stay with us.